Hi, Michelle. The introduction that was missing relates to why, specifically, why am I passing on the information that is contained here to you, and why am I doing it now? The reason why it is you is that there exists between us, and I can see this very clearly, a very deep bond, which I feel for certain, and I'm sure you do also. This bond is such that there is a degree of intimacy, as far as I am concerned, between me and you, which has nothing to do with the physical, nothing to do with our sexes, nothing to do with anything other than spirit to spirit, and that intimacy is an intimacy which arises in Christ and is therefore 100% chaste. Why now? It is because I have been given the communication that you are about to be confronted with the possibility of living a loving relationship which has the potential to be very spiritual and very uplifting and very fulfilling. In order to completely be able to do that, you will need to be able to understand what I am going to say. You need to be able to do what I am recommending you try. However, it is important, extremely important, that I stress this, that this depends upon totally your freedom of initiative, your freedom to act. My duty is completed in setting out these contents. It is up to you entirely if and to what extent to use them in actual life. Anyway, here we are, and I hope you will find this enlightening and useful above all. God bless. So, as I say, this is not available in English, and it is based upon lessons that are contained in two books by Massimo Scaligero. The first one called Sacred Love, which is around 600 pages, and the second is the Grail, which treat basically with the basic topic, which is how to make human love sacred again. That is not falling into the just selfishly seeking bodily pleasure through sex, because all that does is it makes people feel degraded or used and ultimately breaks couples up. It does not help at all in getting any kind of uplift. Instead, what this deals with is the union of equals in equal dignity, and that does not mean that we're identical, but the whole purpose is to take human love and lift it up to a more spiritual dimension so that it can be more fulfilling and be devoted as a service to God and to humanity. As I say, this is not there available for anybody, but the purpose of all of this is to help one another. By helping one another, we thus help all of mankind. And hopefully when the time comes that you find somebody that you can share this kind of experience with, you will also be able to share this knowledge, this video, or whatever. It's also important that I leave a trace for you so that if by any chance I end up under a bus or something, you can get the full meaning of what is involved here. You should be aware that in Jewish tradition, They say that people are all either blind or deaf. And what they mean there is that humanity gets spiritual insights from God either through vision, which is a type of insight which comes through the imagination, but obviously is liable to some degree of distortion from the actual reality of what is going on, or through speech, that is, hearing the voice of God, which is obviously not a real voice but speaks the sound of silence. That gives us inspired teachings, as in the case of Joan of Arc. But again, this needs to be taken with a large pinch of salt, because there are plenty of examples of people who thought they were receiving inspiration, but in fact were getting totally the opposite. The only truly reliable form of spiritual vision is when one has union, when you become the other person, the other phenomenon, the other party, the other entity. And that is the ultimate form of real spiritual communion. But there are some fine points of distinction, and that is the reason why this has to be done via video, because I have to be able to point some things out, as you will see. Now, the original humanity was originally united in the sexes. In the old Jewish tradition, they speak of Adam Kadmon being the Adam of the first chapter of Genesis, the Adam in Eden, before the split of the sexes into male and female, which happened in chapter 2. Now, since that split, which I am sure you understand has been an imperfect split, no human being actually incarnates 100% of their true potential, their true humanity, so that the male is not in touch with his female nature, the female is not in touch with her male nature, though they exist in both. And the purpose, if one can say there is a purpose to this division into sexes, has been to teach humanity how to give and receive love. Now, in a normal heterosexual relationship, the male feels a powerful impulse to give love. And this is probably something that you are familiar with, because I believe that you have an inner male nature. The female, on the other hand, feels a powerful desire to receive love rather than to give it, though obviously when the maternal instinct kicks in, the loving nature of the mother is very much devoted toward the child, but this is not the same as between male and female. It is a special gift to experience both, and it is either a special gift through a great deal of hard work inwardly in preparing for it, or it could also be something through a very special experience of transition, such as I think is what you may be experiencing. The key, however, to the spiritualizing of all of this lies in the purity of heart, which is similar to that which humanity must have experienced during the state of the Garden of Eden. Now, the first thing you need to be aware of when you fall in love, or when you have a partner given to you by God, is that the other person, as a bearer of an individual I, which is itself a fact of awareness or consciousness, and it's something that comes from God, as see when we refer to the first chapter of John. That sacredness is the nature of every individual human being. Now, it is obvious that it does not necessarily follow that each person is aware of their true sacred inner essence. It may be just a form of an inner impulse that they feel that they need to be respected more than other people, and this can take the form of extreme selfishness or narcissism, as in the case of certain American politicians that are well known at the moment. But the reality is, every human being has that sacred core. What we do with it, that is the real test of incarnating. And during the state of being in love with your partner, what happens is that you achieve the same view of the other person that God has. That is, not just of them as they are now, but seeing inside of them as bearers of the Christ within, to the potential that they have to be far more than what they are now. And this can be summed up with these words, which are to be found in the liturgy of the Catholic Mass and in every ancient rite of Christianity. And you will find also in the epistles of Paul. Christ in you. And the response is, and may he fill your spirit. That saying and response is really what you should be saying to your partner from your heart, that you can see the Christ in them, and you invite him to fill his spirit and for him to come into ours as a response to fill up. The purpose of the union is that through finding the Christ in the other person that we love, it is to uplift both of us and create spiritual light for every person and for all the universe, which comes out from the eyes. Now, I'm going to have a little digression here. The eyes were made by the light to radiate and not just to see. Now, the intuition that the eyes were made by the light were first picked up on by Goethe in Goethean science at the end of the 18th century, but has not been picked up later. But the fact is that if you observe other people around you, you will be able to see that there are circumstances in which people are in a state of grace, and when that happens, their eyes shine. The expression shining eyes is not something that is just a mere expression, it is a reality. And this can happen with newborns. During the first 6 weeks, their eyes shine like unbelievably. This happens to couples. When they're in love with each other, their eyes also shine, and it is the one true test that you can see when people are truly in love, in that their eyes do shine. This can also happen when you have special people who are blessed by destiny, who go from success to success as a gift of grace in God's glory. Those people, their eyes also shine, but it is a rare phenomenon, and few people have it, and few people even ever see it. The last group of people who can also see, you can also see this in, is elderly people who have lived a good life, and unfortunately this is becoming rarer and rarer in modern times as we live more and more a materialist life. But this is very definitely a possibility. And of course, as a fleeting experience, it happens when any of us has a resounding success that really galvanizes our soul. Then our eyes shine and we can see the same phenomenon. But that is what the eyes are really there for, to give light, not just to the people around us, but to all the world. Now, the whole phenomenon of being in love and of receiving the person that is sent to you by God is one which relates to spiritual union first. Now, for this, it has to go along the lines of the chakras. Now, the chakras are a Hindu word referring to the main points along the etheric or the life body, which is what we share with plants. These are aligned along the spinal column, and I will refer to them one by one as we go through. These, if they are connected with true love and are used for an uplift of us, can enable us to purify our astral or starry body. They need to be purified because that is where all our impure desires, all our impure passions, and all our impure instincts live. And unless we can transform them through the Christ that lives in our highest innermost I am, which was the name of God in the burning bush, if you remember, to Moses, I am the I am. And the reason why Christ in fact was condemned to death was for saying he was the I am at his trial before the Sanhedrin. That I am is higher and is there to purify our astral and help to uplift us and reach the spirit, which is where we can see each other as through God's viewpoint, which is the state, the definition really of the state of being in love. Now, the second point of spiritual union is really where it is the lowest form of human love, and that is physical penetration using anything. And I mention using anything because when you are in your position, it is not easy for you to penetrate with your physical body the same way that I can, but you can use any part of the body for this. And this is related to the center of the abdomen. Now forgive me if I stand up. The center of the abdomen is this area here, and normally the penetration comes up from below, and it can happen for all human beings into this area from below using any physical means, and it is felt in the etheric. Now when we have true deep uplifting love, the key to it is that penetration is not accompanied with the type of movement and stimulation that is there for the pure pleasure of sex that leads to orgasm. Instead, the impulse is to penetrate as deeply as is possible, because the impulse is to try and get into the person that you love, or to try and feel the person that you love inside you as deeply as possible, as completely as possible. And it is just a long-term union and uplift which carries on not just from the physical but through all the other stages of the spiritual union, because the spiritual union is in fact the reason for the physical union. It is that which justifies the physical union. It is the real motive for the whole thing. It can even take place without any awareness. In other words, you can unite simply in the state of bliss and being overwhelmingly, as it were, drunk on the union that you have with your partner, so that you actually unite without knowing that it even takes place. And this means, under those circumstances, immaculate conception is possible. And what we are talking about here is the possibility of bringing into existence a new human species which is untouched by original sin. As I say before, though, the union is a physical union that pardon me, involves any part of the body, but above all, it is motivated by a deep inner impulse, which is felt, as I say, in the center of the abdomen at the lowest chakra. The third form of spiritual union is through the heart center at the solar plexus. It is not where the physical heart is. Again, I stand up. I'm pointing here. It is right in the center of the chest. That is where the metaphysical heart is. And that is where the embrace usually feels most powerfully binding, where the expression is to try and be as close as possible, heart to heart, as united as possible. Now, physical union heart to heart is not possible, but metaphysically it is. But you need to be aware or beware of impure love that is overwhelmingly passionate. That can be defined in the terms of I can't live without you, or I can't stand it without you, or whatever. It is as degrading and as dangerous in its own way as lust or the pursuit of pleasure through sex is. It degrades and divides. Its opposite, just as in physical union it is the interpenetration, the opposite is self-gift, giving of yourself to the other. This is the same kind of self-gift that we have when we give ourselves to God, and when God gives himself to us in grace. That is all self-gift, and that is what we give and receive, and that is why there is the impulse to be heart to heart. We ask for nothing in return, just as we do not pursue pleasure. It is just giving, and that means there can be no jealousy, because we give, we do not ask to receive. And the union is via the gesture of the embrace, as I have said, heart to heart. The fourth form of spiritual union is one which, in certain cases, does not even arise, but in all true cases of love will, but it may be fleeting. And this is for the chakra of the larynx, which is here, where we use our voice to speak. And that is where the word of Christ resides in us. Again, I'm going to refer you to what I have to say on the prologue of the Gospel of John. Or in this case, it is very clear. The word is something that is in us and available to us. And every word we speak to each other, we speak to each other as a kind of destiny. Now here, the temptation is one of disappointment when we are unable to keep this up. unable to maintain eternal love. Because there, when we feel we speak to each other, we want to speak new beings into existence. We want to speak from our heart, using our words to express how timeless and how complete our dedication is to the other. But this is an important difference that you need to be able to understand. The love is not eternal, but it is timeless. The difference is important. We live, when we do move from heart's spoken words, we live in a timeless dimension. And there, eternity can be contained in an instant. Even the time it takes to say I love you can be something that goes across the ages and fills our whole lifetime. Here the key is morally selfless intent. And here whole worlds are changed by that. And the union takes place through the words of love, spoken from the deepest of our heart to the deepest of the heart of the partner, and spoken and heard back. In fact, it is the reason why, when people are truly in love, they revert to using a type of baby speech. Babies, before they learn to speak the individual language of their country, which they learn from their parents, they speak the same baby speech. And in fact, small children around the age of 3 can interpret baby speech for adults, if you ask them to. They will be able to say what the baby is trying to say, even though they are not words. But it is why, for example, small children will invent words for the very important things in their lives. And I was privileged, for example, to be given a special name by Miranda when she was very small, and she used to call me Whiskamboo, which was a word that does not exist. It was invented. Similarly, when we are deeply in love, we will invent words for each other which are based upon our own intuition of the correct sounds to make. And these are unique, and these are very important, and these are determining for our destiny with the other person as a partnership. The fifth form of spiritual union is centered upon the eyes. In fact, the chakra that is involved is in fact in the center of the forehead, what the Indians call the third eye. But in fact, the eyes shine, as I have previously said, and they become the highest point of bodily communion. The blessedness that we feel in the state of being in love, especially in requited love, pours out through the eyes and becomes a feeling of intimacy, which does not just envelop our beloved, but envelops everything in our surroundings. There is then a kind of return movement which can pour back into us through our eyes in open-mindedness as a kind of return from Christ, in which miracles are possible. And that is why, in fact, major changes in our lives arise in our destiny when we fall in love. And the current that we flow from one person to the other is also expressed in Christ in you, and may he fill your spirit. When we look into each other's eyes, the chaste gesture to start getting that particular current flowing from the bottom of the chakra and out through the eyes that unites everything along there is to touch each other's cheekbone, as I'm demonstrating here, gently, whilst looking the other person in the eye. This will get the current flowing, especially if in your heart you do it as you say, Christ in you, and may he fill your spirit. Then it is the union in Christ, in the light that shines in every human being. Above this too, a sixth, deeper union is possible that is purely spiritual. That becomes union in the light that flows unhindered from spirit to spirit, heart to heart. And that union is also in the music, which is the living word flowing all around us. The realization then arises that our union with our partner is truly modeled on our own inner union with God, which is powered and enhanced through the love that we have for each other. And that mystical union is what purifies and uplifts all our existence and becomes a beacon or north point for our whole life. In other words, that union becomes the reference point by which we judge all possible relations with all people. Is that union as deep, or how deep is it compared with that absolute union? And it also becomes a measuring stick for our own mystical union as time comes with God. This can lead to a possible outcome, listening to the music of the spheres. This can be compared with human music. It in fact is the music that is the weaving of the destiny of all mankind. And not just mankind, it is the weaving of all existence. It is an experience of devotion, of service to God and to our fellow humans. And it gives rise to the possibility of an ever chaster love for everyone that God has chosen. This is the root of the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail that is described in Germanic and in French legend as the cup of the chalice which feeds all of those blessed around them. And believe me, when you have this kind of experience, you will feel it very much like a real food that you really eat and really consume and fills you up, but you don't eat through the mouth, you eat through the heart. And it is like a kind of medication also that will heal all humanity in ages to come. Now, this starts here and now. I have been tasked to give this content to you because you need to know this, because you are being called upon to prepare and try and live this kind of relationship in the near future. God bless you. I am here to help as much as I possibly can. Thank you. Please watch this again, listen to it again, and if you have any questions, contact me. God bless you.